Today we're going to be talking about the second section of coaching, which we call planning. Last time, you should have come up with a mission statement. We did dreaming. Remember, dreaming, basically, we went through, we tried to help the person find the dream, to count the cost, to get that in a concrete way and get it down to a single one or two sentences, single sentence or two sentences, that specifically say what the dream is that we're trying to accomplish. Now we have to take that and turn it into a mission plan. And so this is planning today. Now what are the things that we have to do under planning? The first thing, and these are the skills now. Planning is one of our 12 steps, right? Now in the skills, we have different things we have to deal with. The first one is called generating alternatives. Now for a lot of you that are in the business world and so on, a lot of this is going to be very familiar because if you're in engineering or other things like that, they use a lot of the same methods to go through and come up with plans of how they're going to accomplish things. As an example, one of my last assignments in the Air Force, I was a representative for an organization in California for the Consolidated Space Operations Center. This is a whole center they were building outside of Colorado Springs, and we're talking about millions upon millions of dollars. Supposedly the idea is all military space operations would be conducted from this center. And we had radars and everything else. And I would go to these meetings quite often. And they'd be saying, well, how are we doing on this? How are we doing on this? How are we doing here? It turned out that the overall plan took a lot longer than expected. So much longer than expected. The guys we were training, by the time it was operational, were already transferred someplace else. So do you see the problem in planning? If we don't get a good plan and we don't monitor what's going on, sometimes it takes a real long time to eventually get to that particular area. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. How many of you have ever heard the term brainstorming before? I thought most people probably did. The idea is we just get everybody together and we just think. And the first step is you don't really evaluate what you're doing, you just come up with ideas. As an example, a group got together and brainstormed of a new way, what could they do to make trimming grass easier, and they came up with a whip trimmer, which now about everybody uses. But somebody had to come up with the idea, how do we do it differently instead of using a blade? How are we going to do that differently, and how can we make this whole thing work? And so brainstorming is you have your mission statement, and I passed you out a form that you can use here in your mission planning. And the first step is, of course, you have to write down your mission statement. You have to know what you're going to be doing, right? The second step then is we have to generate alternatives. We have to look outside the box. See, when they came up with a whip trimmer, no one had thought about using a little piece of nylon to knock over a whole bunch of weeds and grass. And so you have to get different ideas. Don't just let your client come up, well, here it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, standard old thing. Let's go look at all of it and try and really work it out. I believe it's Tony Solstice in your leadership coaching book calls this the client's agenda. It's how do we get a hold of what the client really wants, and his statement is the client knows best. Why? One, he has his own ideas, his own passions, and so on, but also, who's God going to speak to about a particular mission, about a particular dream? Probably the client. Now, you might have a prophecy or something else that somebody else brings, but that confirms what God is already speaking to that person, right? So your job as a coach is what? To try and draw out those feelings, those ideas, to really listen of what the client's really looking at, what he thinks God has really called him to do. What does this dream look like in his mind? And you have to really try and listen to the client. Decide what to talk about. Develop action steps. Problem solving. Keeping the client in charge. He has what he calls a wheel of life, which is work, ministry, spiritual life, personal development, physical, hobbies, and recreation, pace of life, finances, family, marriage, and social. So he's saying what? All of those things affect everything in this person's life, right? And especially if we're doing life coaching. We might be dealing with all of those areas in whatever we're coming up with here. So you can use that sort of a checklist. Have I thought about everything? Have we taken everything into account here that's going on? What the impact's going to be? He also talks about pressure points, particular areas that are critical. Ever hear the statement, the long pole in the tent? Okay, what does that mean? There's certain things that are critical to this thing happening, and we better cover those particular things. And finally, is this God's agenda? After we get this whole idea what the client is talking about, is this really what God wants for the client? Does the client believe this is what God wants, or do they just get off here and now they're coming up with their ideas again, they're going to run their own life and do their own thing? The second one, the skills, is called decision making. Set the criteria of what will make a successful solution. If you don't have a target, you can't hit it, right? So therefore, you've got to come up with some ideas of what is it that we're really trying to do in a concrete way, and now we have to evaluate those alternatives. And we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we brainstormed here, and we've got to evaluate those and say, okay, if this is the criteria, this is the goal we're trying to meet, right? How well did those criteria, those different alternatives, how well those different alternatives meet that particular goal? You have to look at the pros and cons of those things as you go through. Maybe a combination of alternatives is better. And if we do part of this and part of that and part of that, that will get the job accomplished the best. Are there other possible alternatives to be tried? Maybe we need to try several. And then obtain a commitment finally to do it. Until we get a commitment from the client to do it, have we got any place? Now we're just talking about stuff, we're just nice conversation, unless they're really willing to do it. Now once we have that, what do we have? Our general overall alternative. We're going to do it this way. Setting specific goals is the next one. What steps are necessary to achieve the first alternative method? We've gone through the alternative and said, this is the way we're going to do it, okay? We're going to go to college. That's how we're going to get our degree so we can become a counselor or something, okay? Or we're going to go to Bible college. Now, how are we going to go to Bible college? What's the specific goal? Do you think maybe we ought to apply? Maybe we need to find a college? Maybe we need to do something to see this happen. How will we know when this step is achieved? When we get accepted, right? When will it be done? See, I remember when our kids were going to college and so on, we spent all this time trying to get scholarships and apply to colleges and everything else, but there were certain deadlines. If you didn't meet those deadlines, you're not going. Focus on the destination. Start with one goal. One of the things you can do is get really confused here, right? What goal do we want to start with? The long pole in the tent. The most important goal. We want, if we don't get that one straightened out, we know how we're going to accomplish that, then the rest of these small goals aren't going to make a lot of difference. What is the critical thing? Major where most motivated. Because whatever this person, what they really want the most, let's go work on that. Be concise. Specifically, what is it? What kind of a college do you want? And it's okay later on to change goals. One of the things I said one time is, what we're trying to do today is an impossible task. Why is this an impossible task? Well, how does God work? Does He just lay out your entire life before you and never make any changes? Does He just give you the entire picture of your life from now until you die? Or does God ask you to follow Him and gives you one mid-course correction after another, one little piece at a time, well, do this, now do this, now do this? But if we don't have an overall plan, an overall goal, we're not going to have the direction to go. And yes, we're getting the direction to go. We're not saying that later on God might say, well, no, I really want you to go over here, and that college you thought you wanted to go to, I'm closing that door, and I want you to go to this one over here. We're not saying that, but we're saying we've got to have a plan. We have to have some direction if you're going to be coaching somebody. You know, it would be nice to know what race the person you're coaching is going to run in before you start. Not just try to teach them everything about running the 50-yard dash and the marathon at the same time. It'd be nice to have something more concrete, more concise, something that you can aim at, and then we can change. I'm going to really get around the 440, right? Well, that's okay, but at least we got going in some particular direction. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time specific. This is really critical. Again, I'll read those again. This is SMART. That's what it's. This is called a SMART goal. From your book again. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time specific. That's what your goals need to look at. If you have a goal, you should be able to ask yourself each one of those and say, is it all of those? If it's not concise enough, it's not specific enough to get the job done. And now we're going to get into the thing you're going to be doing today when we break up in this class. And that is going to be writing a mission plan. How are we going to do that? And you have the form there that we have for writing a mission plan. What's a mission plan? How am I going to get from here to there, right? So what's the first thing I need in my mission plan? Well, besides your mission statement, and don't get mission statements and mission plans mixed up, okay? Just so they both have mission in them. The one is like a one or two liner, right? The other one is going to be a list of the steps of how we're going to get there. So we need where we're at, and we need where we're going, right? And then we have to fill in all the steps in between. That's what writing a mission plan is all about, and that's what we're going to be doing today. One of the first things you need to consider, even before you're getting into the mission plan, this will be part of your plan, these steps need to be there, is the foundation steps that we've already talked about in dreaming have to be accomplished, because we need to know where this person is spiritually, don't we? If they're going to be a pastor, and they're a brand new Christian, they've only been saved for 3 days, do we have some work to do? See, does God usually take people and, well, they've never been a pastor, they've never done anything for the kingdom of God, now he's going to make them the evangelist to save all of South America? Does that usually happen? Now, God can do anything, we agree, but that isn't the way God usually works. He usually takes people to one thing, another thing, another thing, another thing. When I came into the ministry, I started out from one particular thing. He took us from one church to another to another. As I was in the military, he gave us different jobs, different situations, and by the time we became pastors, we had done everything from evangelism to groups, to Sunday school, to nursing homes, to jail ministry, to you name it. We had a lot of different ministries and stuff that we were involved in as God was growing us and teaching us stuff. And that's the way God usually works. What are some of the things we're going to have to do concurrently with that to build the person to go along with the plan? Overcoming fears. Dealing with self-worth issues, significance issues. That's our whole faith therapy course. Remember, there are a number of courses in our coaching certification program here. Well, all of those things fit in here, okay? Because as an example, if somebody is really struggling and they feel absolutely inadequate to do anything, are we going to have to help them out? Remember the faith therapy course that you'll get deals with the issues of self-worth, significance, love, and security from God's point of view. Is God's point of view a little bit different than the world's point of view? A whole lot different. And we don't want to produce a whole bunch of ministers or people out there playing King of the Hill or in the middle of the rat race, do we? So we have to get them out of the rat race and out of playing King of the Hill and out of doing things in a worldly way in order to help them. So that's how the faith therapy course fits into here. Then we have spiritual growth. If this person's on the first of the 8 steps of spiritual growth, how far do you think we can lead them into the ministry? Well, if you know anything about those steps, the first step, people get saved, why? To meet their own needs. Selfishness, basically. And they haven't even made Jesus Lord of their life. So who's in charge of their life? They are. Can we disciple? Can we coach somebody like that into a powerful minister? Only if we take them through those steps and build them spiritually to get them someplace. And that's, of course, we'll have next trimester. That's Revelations that set you free. It's in spiritual growth. And it's going to take you through those steps and help you do that. So it is all the foundational stuff to your plan. And if it isn't met, now if it's met, you don't put it in there, right? But if it isn't met, you're going to have to add that in your plan. We're going to have to build this person up spiritually to get them to the place they can do what God called them to do. Faith deficits. In the faith therapy book, we have like faith assessments. We have all sorts of things in there. And then what if they have some more complicated problems than that? If another course is not required as part of your coaching, it's called transformation. It deals with the more difficult things. But remember, in your coaching, if they really need counseling, what are you going to have to do? Either get them counseling along with the coaching, or stop the coaching and get the counseling done, and then go back to the coaching, right? That's why on your background form, remember there were all those little red flag checks on your background form that said they check any of these? You need to look into it to see if the person needs coaching or will they need counseling. And then we have another one, another course that you're going to get in our coaching program, which are biblical principles. And what that teaches you is how to deal with complex planning problems from the Bible. You understand there are some things that are fairly simple, okay? This person wants to become an usher in the church. Okay? That probably isn't going to be the hardest coaching you're ever going to do, right? If that's the total goal of where we're going. But let's just say that God is calling them to be a worldwide evangelist to Arab countries. Are we going to have some issues that we're going to have to deal with? And some things we're going to have to do in our coaching? Well, in that particular course, and Principles for Life, it deals with 44 biblical principles and then teaches you a whole method out of Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5, a complex 9-part model of the heart. And what you do from that is you're able to build what we call problem trains. That's how they got themselves in a mess. Solution trains, that's how you're going to get them out of the mess. And then complex counseling and coaching plans of how you're going to do that step by step using biblical principles and so on. And so that's probably one of the more difficult courses that we're going to have here in the whole coaching program, okay? But again, you need that because sometimes you're going to have stuff that complex. Sometimes you're not going to have things that complex, but if you don't understand what's going on inside the person, you might be at a loss for what's going on, a loss for what to do, and you run into roadblocks and you run into particular problems. But those are all the foundational things to your plan. Write down each step. We now have our idea, we come up with our alternatives, we know the direction we're going. Now we have to write down each step from the beginning to the end that needs to be taken to get from point A to point B. Then we have to ask ourselves a question, what resources do we need to get there? See, what if this person is absolutely destitute and can't qualify for any college aid, but needs to get a PhD in clinical psychology? Do we have a problem? We have a few resources that are going to be necessary. We have to come up with some way to do that. Maybe they're going to have to work a job and take one course at a time. And this is going to take them 23 years. But they have to find a college that will let them do that too. How will they be obtained? How will each one of these steps be obtained? How will we know when the step is achieved? It has to all be very concrete, okay? What is the goal for its achievement specifically? What is it? What degree are they looking for? From what particular college? And then what is the specific overall PERT chart? How many of you ever heard of PERT before? Program Evaluation Review Technique. Okay, that's what's used. That's what was used at the Consolidated Space Operations Center. That's what we were looking at every day, this complete huge chart of everything that had to be going on and what could be done in parallel. What this had to be done before this could be done, which had to be done before this, but we can do all of these things over here at the same time. And what they do is they figure out what is the critical factor. Okay, this one has to get done before this one, this one, this one. So they monitor the critical factors, and they try to optimize this thing so it'll get done effectively in the shortest period of time as possible. Now understand that for most coaching, you're not going to have to do a PERT chart, okay? But there might be some that you're involved in. It's that complex. And what it does is it allows you to lay out how do you do these things. What do they basically just do? All it is you have a little line of length of time, okay? This particular thing we think is going to take this long. One of the things they tend to do is they say, what is the shortest amount of time? What's the longest amount of time this is going to take? Okay? Now this one has to be done before this one can begin. Okay? And from this you can determine what's the shortest amount of time, what's the longest amount of time the whole thing's going to take, and if you have a problem with this one, how is it going to affect this one, this one, this one, and this one? Get the idea? And you can sort of lay that all out, give you an idea of where things are and how things are going to be developed. It's just a standard thing that's used in industry on making buildings and building almost anything that's built. They do that kind of a thing. And we're not expecting to become an expert at that, but just to understand, you need to have a general idea of how this whole thing fits together and what affects what. And what can be done in parallel, what is done sequentially. As you're counseling the person, remember, who's doing this, by the way? The client, right? You're not sitting down there saying, well, let's just do this, this, and this. You need to draw the client out to do this and help them come up with their own plan. Why? Because they're the one God's going to be speaking to, and they're the one that's going to have to carry it out. And if they don't really believe in what you're telling them, are they going to carry it out very well? Not going to happen, right? See, one of the things in counseling, too, it's much better if they come up with the idea than if you give them the idea. Because there's a better chance that they're going to do it, and it's theirs, and they're going to own it, right? Now, how do you do that? How do you keep them in charge? Here's some ideas. Comes out of leadership coaching. Instead of making a suggestion, ask a question instead. Offer your ideas last. Make multiple suggestions. Well, we can do it this way, this way, this way, and this way. Which one do you think would be best? Ask the client to choose. Let's keep the client in charge of his own life, right? God put him in charge of his life. God won't make him do something. Then establish a solution. Here are the 4 tests to a solution. Clarify it. Has to be very clear, right? Commitment. Is the client committed to this particular thing? Do they really see, that's what I want to do? Date. When is this particular thing going to be done? If they won't give you a date, what does that tell you? They may not be that committed, or they may not believe it's really going to happen. What happens if they really don't believe they can do this? How do you handle that? Hey, take it one little step at a time. Break the thing up in all the little pieces. Let's just get them to believe that they can do the first step. And then after the first step happens, then we get them to believe to do the second step, and the third step, and the fourth step, and so on. And a deadline. Okay, we'll meet together 2 weeks from now, and you will have your mission statement done, right? Okay, that's coaching, right? Then nailing it down. What's nailing it down? You got to get it solid, in concrete. This is what we're going to do, where we're going to go, what's going to happen. Because if you don't nail it down and you leave it sort of general, what's going to happen? Nothing. Or very little. Ensure commitment. Verbalize the action. Get them to say, now what are you going to do? Okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to apply to 5 colleges. Which colleges? Did they offer the degree you're looking for? Eliminate the ought to. Many times they'll say, well, I ought to do this. What does that tell you? They're not committed to do it, are they? They think that that might be the right thing they ought to do, but they're not committed that they're going to go out and apply to those 4 colleges. Quantify the commitment. Okay, now you're going to apply to 4. We're only going to get 1 done in the next couple of weeks. All 4, right? All 4. Expect accountability. When they walk in 2 weeks to your next coaching session, or when you call them on the phone, what should they expect? You expect they've applied to all 4 colleges, right? Write it down. In counseling, when we get people to commit to boundaries and other things, we always write them down. Why? 5 weeks later, the couple comes in, well, I thought it was this. No, I thought it was this. Well, let's look. Let's see what you agreed to here. We have it written down in concrete. Got the picture? Okay, now let's go over the plan one more time. Okay? Define the beginning and the end point. Generate different options of how to get there. Evaluate the options. Choose the best option. Define the necessary steps to achieve the option. Which steps can occur in parallel and which is sequential? This is sort of that PERP thing. Remember, we could be doing several things. We could be applying for scholarships at the same time that we are applying for colleges, couldn't we? Set specific goals and time frames for each step. Set the criteria when the step has been successfully achieved. Optimize the plan. What does that mean? Play around with it, get it so it flows the best. You have your best setup here. And then, is this what God wants? Your whole plan down on paper. Now the question is this my idea? Is this my coach's idea? Or is this what God really wants? How are you going to know? Do you have peace about it? Remember the test we gave you earlier? When you think about it, when you mull it over in your mind, do you have peace about it? Do you really have that feeling in the spirit, that still small voice that says, yeah? If you don't have that, what do you need to do? Go back and keep playing with it until you get it down to the place that, yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do. I believe that's what God is calling me to do. That's what I'm going to do. And I still have peace about doing it, right? Write out the final mission plan, and if necessary, do a PERT chart. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through an entire example. Okay? And we're going to start all the way from the beginning of dreaming. And the example I'm going to take is coaching that I am still in the process of doing. What's the primary coaching that most of us have done automatically? Parenting, right? Okay, I've got a daughter, her name is Sarah. Okay? And how did I get to be her coach? When she was born, right? I volunteered to be her coach. Probably even before that. So in dreaming, I'm going to go through the dreaming part, and I'm going to get into the planning part, and let's see how this all goes. In dreaming, what are my steps? First, I have to establish the relationship, right? Okay. Well, since I was her parent, that was sort of an automatic relationship there. Had to let her know sort of what my job was as a parent as she grew up, right? This is what I can do for you. This is what I cannot do for you. I can't go to school and take your test for you. You're the one who's going to have to go to school. You're the one who's going to determine what you can be in life and what God has called you to do. Coaching ethics. I don't twist her arm. See, what do you think about parents that have an idea that already decide what their kids are supposed to be before they're even born, and they force their kid to do it? Is that a good coach? Now the coach wants to know, what race do you want to run? Not, okay, you are going to run the 50-yard dash because when I was a kid, I tried to run the 50-yard dash, and I got a silver medal in the Olympics, so you're going to get the gold. Is that good coaching? Is that going to work? Does God always call your kid to do what you want him to do? Do kids always do what you want them to do? Do they make the same choices you want them to make? Doesn't tend to happen, does it? So we need the coaching agreement. In this case, we didn't have to fill out a form. What do you think? It was sort of automatic. Self-evaluation. What did I have to do in that? Know my daughter, right? Know what she was good at. Know what she really wanted to do. What kind of things she did naturally. What her passions were. And I learned that over a period of time. Powerful questioning. We got to the place that she was trying to decide going into high school and so on. We really had to sit down and I said, what do you really want to do? What do you really think God wants for you in your life? And one of the things that really came, she had to decide what school she was going to go to. And one of the programs that's available here in Wichita is the International Baccalaureate program. But it's very difficult and very structured. It's about like going to college and high school. And she had to decide if she wanted to apply and if she wanted to go. But of course it would give her a better chance at scholarship. She would be with all the elite people and so on and so forth. There would be a chance to go further in life. But it was her decision. And we did try to bribe her a little bit. We offered her that she could quit her piano lessons if she went to the IB program. But she didn't have to go, type of thing. And she chose to go. We had to do, remember the evaluation, analysis of passion, values, passions, talents, gifts, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Remember all that? That's what we had to look at, evaluate her. Is this something she could really do, that she really wanted to do? And then was she saved? Yeah, she gets saved like about 6 or 7 years old. And she'd been in the church all of that time. We believed Jesus was Lord of her life. She had a decent spiritual foundation. So we had to find and identify the dream. When she went to high school, she had this teacher in psychology that she just loved, and she just grooved on that, and she was always sort of counseling her friends anyway. You know, all the drama that kids go through and all of that kind of stuff. Well, I was talking to kids and doing that kind of thing. But she was the one that was going to have to determine what her dream was. And coming out of high school, she had to really get that concrete because she had to decide where she wanted to go, right? And we did is we offered both of our kids the Reiner scholarship, which gave them a certain amount of money to work toward college, to use toward college, plus whatever scholarships they got. The only 2 requirements, they had to maintain a 3.0 and they had to go to church once a week. And that was their data that they had. And they didn't have to take the scholarship, do you understand? That was totally their choice. I'm afraid this scholarship is limited only to Reiners. And we had to count the cost. What she told us is she really wanted to be a psychologist. Now what's the problem with psychology? It's probably the only field you almost have to have a PhD. And so we're talking 9 to 10 years of school. And that is going to be pretty hard, isn't it? Especially since our Reiner scholarship only went to 4.5 years. Which means there are going to be a lot of other loans or a lot of other ways of making money that she's going to have to see this thing happen. Probably we're talking getting out of school like $60,000 to $100,000 in debt. If we're going to do it. But she had to decide, right? Not our job. And then she had to decide what school. So we had to write a mission statement. This is more what our mission statement sounded like. To help hurting people find the abundant life through God. Very simple mission statement, but there's a lot now in the planning stages that we're going to have to go through, right? Now, there's a lot of different ways she can do that, isn't there? See, think of counseling. There are a whole lot of areas you could be a Christian counselor in a church, take a program like you're involved in right here, and so on, and you could meet that mission statement, couldn't you? And then you have all the master's level type of counseling that you could do. There's a whole thing with a lay counselor. You could be a group leader. You could be a marriage and family therapist. You could be a clinical psychologist, whatever. So you had to define that and get that a lot tighter now, didn't we, as we moved into the planning stage. What's one of the things we're going to have to do in the planning here? After she gets out of school, what's she going to have to do? Apply to different colleges, right? Now, do you think she wanted to go to all the colleges we thought she ought to go to? You know, us, the parents, the coach, well, the problem with coaching your own kids is you'll get a vested interest in this thing, you know what I mean? So it does make it a little bit more difficult of what's going on. And we went out and we took a trip and went over most of the United States. One of the things, since she was interested in Christian psychology, there's only about 9, there were 7 at that time, universities that offer either a PsyD, that is a PhD, that's a doctoral degree in psychology, which is more counseling, or a PhD, which is more research-oriented. In fact, there are only 2 universities in the United States that offer a PhD in clinical psychology that is integrated with Christianity. That limited things quite a bit, didn't it? So we visited all of these different schools, right? And they have different price tags, and they have different particular things. You know, us as parents, if we had a choice, we pretty would have had her go to ORU because it's pretty close, right? And it probably wouldn't have been too expensive, especially if she got a scholarship for it and so on and so forth. And then there were 3 universities out in LA, the LA area, which again, we didn't care too much about her going out to LA, you know, the whole idea. But most of the universities that do this are out there. And so we went to their, you know, visit the university and all the things they present and all this kind of stuff. And we sort of liked a number of them. And she didn't even get accepted due to paperwork messed up at ORU at all. They lost the paperwork. And another one, she didn't get, because this one school offered a full scholarship type of thing, but she didn't get that. And guess what she chose? Another one, if she had enough scholarships there, she would have made money going to school. But guess what she chose? The most expensive of all of them. Pepperdine University. You know, where all the movie stars go and all the... now, is that her choice? Because see, she had an agenda we didn't really have built into this. Part of her agenda is have a social life. Because if you're going to study psychology, you just as well enjoy it, right? And Pepperdine sits on, above Malibu Beach. You can jog right down to Malibu Beach. And everything is a panoramic view of that whole area. Now, do we have any struggles or any problems? Now, this Kansas kid going to Pepperdine, she's pretty feeling like a little kid from Kansas for at least the first 6 months and had some struggles. What are we going to have to do? We're talking about next time, which is support, right? And those kind of things. But she had, you know, some of her friends, you know, George Foreman's son, another girlfriend of a friend of hers was the daughter of the second richest man in the world. She babysat movie stars, kids. It was that whole environment. She actually got in the sorority and became the social chairman of the sorority, setting up, you know, dances at the Beverly Hills Hotel on yachts. But what does that do to psychology? You have to take into account what the kid wants and what they like and what they enjoy. You have to hear them, right? So that probably wouldn't have been our choice. Of course, it means that she ran up some higher bills, but she got very good scholarships, which helped. And then she took some courses in the summer and graduated in 3 years. So now in our plan, where are we? Well, we got a little bit to go, don't we? Now she's got a bit of a problem. Is she going to apply to secular schools? What if she doesn't get into one of the two? And by the way, she decided at that point she wanted to go for a PhD. Now, why for a PhD rather than a PsyD? Because the PhD you can teach at universities if you want to. With the PsyD you can only teach like in counseling and so on. With the PhD is more research oriented. And out of the two schools she went and visited and she applied to both of them. At the one, she got accepted for the PhD program. At the other, she got accepted for the PsyD program. What's she going to have to do? You think go to the PhD program. No, she's got to hear from God, right? And she went to the program with the PsyD program, and then after a year, she applied to get into the PhD program and was able to do that. But she's still there, still going to school. She's counseling. This summer, she has like 10 clients right now at the University Counseling Center. But you see, we're going to have to be, we got a plan, we put it together, the plan isn't done, there's still more pieces. Because she still has to, she's finishing her master's thesis right now, she has to go under a PhD dissertation in research. She has to then find a practicum for a year after that. And then she'll have to get out and get a job for a while, and then she can come and get into something more specific. So it is this pretty complex, long plan. That's the kind of thing you can get into sometimes in the area of coaching, especially if you're a parent. But you see sort of the idea how you get all the pieces and the process that we're going through here. Obviously, in this case, our process was more of a step at a time. It wasn't as formal as what we're teaching you in this class here. But still, it was a process. And we have to get a hold of that, get it concrete. See, we have to have specific goals. Guess what her parents tell her when she calls right now? Honey, have you got the master's thesis done? If you don't have the master's thesis done by next semester, they're going to charge you for another course, and that's like $2,100. So, do we have to do a bit of motivation as part of this coaching process, do you think? And do a lot of prayer and a lot of support? Of course, that's what we'll be talking about next week, is how do you support, how do you do all of those functions. But this week, we're homing in on the plan. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to have you get together with the person that you're coaching. We'll split up the remaining time here, and we want you to fill out the remainder of this mission plan. Again, if you don't have time to get it done, get their telephone number and give them a call and read, what do I expect of you? What's my concrete goal for you in my coaching of this class? Have the mission plan done when you come to class next week. Let's pray. Lord, you are the one that's truly in charge of our life. And you have this overall plan for us. And we ask you would open our ears and our hearts and our minds and give us the direction. Yes, we know, Lord, that you're going to maybe make changes in the future. But Lord, give us a plan. Give us a direction. Give us a focus for our lives, Lord. And we give you all the glory and the honor in Jesus' name.